GHT. Sir Epicure Mammon. Sir Epicure, look at the name again, notice the name Epicure, Epicure, Epicure Mammon, Mammon. Now, this Sir Epicure Mammon is almost like a wealth worshipper or a worshipper of wealth, you can say. मैं जानबूझ करके लालची टाइप का वर्ड यूज नहीं कर रहा हूं. So he was a wealth worshipper or a worshipper of wealth. Among those dupes, there is another character, and his name is Puritan's Ananias. Again, notice the name. Among those dupes, the other is a character, Puritans, 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 Ananias, Ananias. Now, this Puritans Ananias is a character जो कि बहुत ही प्रिटेंशियस काम किस्म का, बहुत ही प्रिटेंड करने वाला, दिखावे करने वाला, शोई या शो ऑफ यू कैन से. So this pretentious character named Puritans Ananias. There is yet another character among that group of dupes, जिनके हाथ डॉल कॉमन और सटल और फेस मिल करके sermons, extremely sorry, spurious charms वगैरह बेचते हैं. That is the character मैं नाम ले रहा हूं. And again notice the name, Tribulation Wholesome. Tribulation, Tribulation. Tribulation Wholesome, Wholesome. There is another character among the dupes, and he is a very ambitious fellow, a seller of tobacco basically, perhaps, if I'm not wrong. Tobacconist कहा गया है उसे character ड्रामे में. And this ambitious tobacconist, उसका नाम जरा से नोटिस करिए, वो भी बड़ा विचित्र नाम है, एबल ड्रगर. एबल, ABEL, ड्रगर, DRUGGER, ड्रगर. Among this group of dupes, let us introduce one more character, and that was a law clerk as well as a gamester, GAMESTR, and that was a law clerk as well as a gamester, and his name is Dapper, DAPPER. And there is another character among those dupes, Castril, KASTRIL. And this Castril also had his widowed sister. ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट कैरेक्टर है, आखिर में it becomes very important. Pliant, PLIANT, right? Pliant. So I repeat this whole pack of character once again. Look at this great breed of character in the play. Lovewit, who left his London house, goes somewhere, leaving the house to the care of his servant. Face को अकेला मौका मिल गया है, so he plans along with the fraudster Subtle and his companion that doll common, and then they started dispensing spurious charms, and they sold the spurious charms to the dupes. And मैंने एक series of characters introduce किया, that Sir Epicure Mammon, Puritans Ananias, Tribulation Wholesome, Drugger, Dapper, DAPPER, Castril, and his widowed sister, Pliant. Now let us move ahead. There is a gambler in the play, Surly, SURLY. And this gambler, Surly, जिसका नाम Surly है, he is very shrewd. So this shrewd gambler, Surly, he exposes them. Kinko? Face, Subtle, and doll common. And they were selling those spurious charms, है ना? And duping, trying to dupe those characters जो के नाम मैंने earlier लिया है. So this shrewd gambler named Surly was nearly exposes the sham, and he appears in front of them as a Don, as a Spanish Don, seeking the proposal of, or seeking the hand of Pliant. Pliant, pliant. But the people did not believe him that they are being duped and spurious charms are being sold to them and they are befooled by face, subtle, and dull common. So his accusations or his attempt to expose them was not accepted, rather it was rejected. Anyways, the play moves forward, and towards the end part of the play, Lovewit reappears. Lovewit reappears. And this reappearance of Lovewit is without informing them, without any kind of warning, without telling कि मैं वापस आ रहा हूँ वगैरह वगैरह kind of, right? So without warning, without informing, Lovewit comes back, he reappears, and Subtle, that alchemist, Subtle, and his female companion Dolcommon, they fled. They fled away because Lovewit appeared, so they fled away. Face was left alone, and Face has to feel sorry. Face was obliged, or rather compelled, to feel that he had done mistakes, or rather he had done very bad things of befooling and duping the people by selling those spurious charms, etc. And Face compensates this mistake that he had done. Towards the end of the play, Face jo hai, he compensates the mistake that he had already done by arranging the marriage of Lovewit, his master, with that beautiful and wealthy Kintu widow, Dame Pliant. So Pliant ke saath uski marriage. So this is a normal outline of the play. Now let us now come to Ben Jonson and the play once again, and let us now look at the play along with Ben Jonson as a dramatist. I told you that he was a critic, he was a poet, but I am leaving that aspect apart now, believing that if you're interested in Ben Jonson, you will surely try to work upon these aspects of Ben Jonson. I have also highlighted that Ben Jonson was not simply a creative writer. He was not like any other writer of the Elizabethan age. He was not even like Beaumont Fletcher or किसी भी किस्म के writer, बल्कि he is a great contributor in the way that he set the ball of Elizabethan literature rolling, in the way he practiced whatever he was taught in his university days with regard to literature, with regard to classicism, with regard to the European tradition of literature, with regard to Grecian tradition of literature, etc., etc. So we look at, अब मैं यहाँ पे एक term use करूंगा, it's a very common term, you know that term, but I am using this. Okay, we look at basically, my dear friends, we look basically at Ben Jonson as the first theorist of English literature. आपने एक टर्म सुना होगा, आजकल बहुत फैशन में है, literary theory. Other than literary criticism, we now call it literary theory, right? Or खाली theory बल्कि, even not literary theory, खाली theory. Even if you are listening to some very serious kind of journalists, you will be able to listen. If you are following very serious kind of journalists of this country, I don't want to name them, you will be able, you must have listened with this particular word, theory. So we look at Ben Jonson as the first theorist of English literature. But anyways, I have to limit myself to drama. Every Man in His Humor is a title of Ben Jonson's play. Volpone, Volpone, है ना, Volpone, जिसका एक सबटाइटल भी है द फॉक्स. So Volpone is another title by Ben Jonson, Ben Jonson's play. Epicone Epicone is Epicone. The subtitle of this particular play is The Silent Woman. The Alchemist is another title, and Bartholomew Fair is another title of his play. So what I have done is that I have given you 5, 6 titles of Ben Jonson's comedies. I repeat: Every Man in His Humor, Volpone, Epicone or The Silent Woman, Volpone or The Fox, The Alchemist, which is our play, and Bartholomew Fair. And I also told you that he wrote tragedies, of course, not as successfully as he wrote comedies. But yes, I referred to Sejanus earlier. I am now referring to another tragedy by Ben Jonson, and that was Catiline, Catiline, right? अगर मैं आपसे ये कहूं कि he was influenced by a very great ancient writer of comedies, and that was a Roman writer. I hope you have heard the name. I have taken this name earlier also. Terence. Plautus and Terence were two very great comedy writers from the ancient Latin literature of the belonging to the Roman civilization. Among them, I am referring to Terence at present. That Ben Jonson was basically influenced by the classical Latin comedies, especially the comedies of Terence, Terence. I would like to say just one sentence about the concept of comedy of humor. The entry is there in M.H. Abrams. I have already referred to this book, and some of you in the very first day from your group have referred to another very beautiful book, that was a glossary of literary terms by Cudden, Cuddon, which is certainly much better than M.H. Abrams, right? So either you refer to that, or you refer to this, or even lot of literary terms ki kitabein jo hai are available on the net also free of cost. So that is not our concern, but my concern is that if you refer to any book or any glossary of literary terms, even if you refer to Encyclopedia Britannica and ask there कि ये comedy of humor का concept क्या है ना? तो you will get the historical aspect कि किस तरीके से how Ben Jonson introduced this particular format in the course of Elizabethan comedies, right? And when we talk about the course of Elizabethan comedies, certainly we refer to Shakespearean comedies and we refer to Johnsonian comedies, right? So, comedy of humor का जो पूरा concept है, वो उसने, I mean, Ben Jonson ने, he had taken it from the ancient concept of medicine. Some of you who know and who have read about the ancient concept of medicine may know that in that ancient concept of medicine, we are being told that human body has 4 humors, Humors, not OU. And a human body has 4 humors, Humors. And among those 4 humors one is called phlegm. I hope you know phlegm. The other is blood. The other is choler, Choler, and the other is melancholy. So 4 humors: choler, Choler, melancholy, phlegm, and blood. ठीक है? और ये चारों ह्यूमर्स ऐसा कहा जाता है जो एंशिएंट मेडिकल साइंसेज हैं, and Aristotle played a very important role in ancient medical sciences, you know. So it is said, and Ben Jonson basically utilized this idea, utilized this concept कि अगर इंसान की बॉडी में इसमें से किसी भी एक एलिमेंट की क्वांटिटी ज्यादा हो जाए, अगर किसी के बॉडी में से फॉर एग्जांपल खोलर ज्यादा हो जाए, किसी के बॉडी में मेलंकली ज्यादा हो जाए, किसी के बॉडी में फ्लेग्म वाला एलिमेंट ज्यादा हो जाए, सो इट इज सेड के दैट क्रिएट्स कॉमेडी. एक्सेसिवनेस और एक्सेसिव मौजूदगी excessive presence of any of the four humors in human body, or let us say like this, the disbalance between the four humors inside the human body creates comedy. So it's a very unique concept of comedy that was based on medical sciences. And Ben Jonson ने इसका इस्तेमाल, Ben Jonson has used this concept and had undertaken this concept to a great height. And in almost all his major comedies, whether it was Volpone, which is subtitled as The Fox, or Epiccione, which is subtitled as The Silent Woman, or Every Man is Humor, or The Alchemist, उसने इस particular thing का बहुत गजब का इस्तेमाल इस concept का किया है for literature. बस अब मैं ह्यूमर के बारे में और ज्यादा बात नहीं करना चाहता. The next thing that I introduce with regard to Ben Jonson's comedies and also with regard to this particular comedy, that is The Alchemist, is satire. Listen to me very carefully that जब हम लोग ह्यूमर की बात करते हैं तो ह्यूमर खाली अकेला नहीं आता है. ह्यूमर हमेशा, पता नहीं क्यों, आई डोंट नो, आई एम नॉट एन एक्सपर्ट इन ऑल दीज थिंग्स, बट ह्यूमर हमेशा सटायर के साथ आता है, ह्यूमर एंड सटायर. और दूसरी एक बड़ी गजब की बात आपको बताएं कि जितने क्लासिकल राइटर्स हैं, आई डोंट वांट टू से क्लासिकल राइटर, आई बेसिकली वांट टू से दोज हु आर द बिलीवर्स इन क्लासिसिज्म और द क्लासिकल थियरी ऑफ लिटरेचर. So those who believe in the classical theory of literature, those who believe in classicism, whether it was the ancient classicism or the neoclassicism of the post Renaissance French and English literature. अगर आप हिस्ट्री पढ़ेंगे तो French literature, post Renaissance French literature impacted a lot upon English literature and exerted a tremendous pressure in starting tremendous influence in the beginning of or rather the re-beginning of classicism or the classical strain in English literature, right from Restoration onwards. If you study the history of English literature, you will find out that Restoration, those 40 years, 1660, 1700, and the whole of the 18th century, that is 1700 to 1798, to be more precise, which has been also referred as the Augustan age, right? The first half of that century is referred as the age of Pope. The second half of that century is referred as the age of Johnson. So the whole of these 140 plus years, around 140, don't say 140 plus, around 140 years from 1660 to 1798 has been termed as neoclassicism in the history of English literature. So if you look at this also, you will find out कि इस जमाने में भी, यानी neoclassicism के पीरियड में भी ह्यूमर, सटायर, ये वाले एलिमेंट्स बहुत स्ट्रांग थे इंग्लिश लिटरेचर में. उसके आगे पीछे मैं ये नहीं कह रहा हूं कि ह्यूमर और सटायर इंग्लिश लिटरेचर में नहीं रहा, बट इन अ वेरी लिमिटेड वे. Humor and satire led the way of literature, English literature during the neoclassical times. That was 1660 to 1798. Anyways, moving back, पीछे जाकर के बेन जॉनसन का समय दरअसल एलिजाबेथन एज का समय है. I have already told you that he was a great exponent of classicism in English literature, right? He followed the Roman Grecian pattern of classicism, right? So what I'm trying to tell you, my dear friend, is कि Ben Jonson के context में, and also in the context of this particular play, that is The Alchemist, you should look at this particular element called satire. So humor as well as satire. And I give you two areas, two suggestions that you should try to prepare a question, or you should try to prepare an analysis of The Alchemist. And the heading should be The Alchemist as a Comedy of Humor. The second is The Alchemist as a satirical play, or the element of satire in The Alchemist. Moving ahead, my dear friend, the next thing that I would like to say to you is Ben Jonson's comedies. Look, this is very important, and this will make you understand the play in a better way. The comedies of Ben Jonson express a very strong distaste for the world in which Ben Jonson was living. The society, the Elizabethan society in which he was living. When you will refer to the Restoration writers of 1660, 1700, And when you will refer to the Augustan writers of 1700 to 1798, I mean, the whole of the neoclassical writers, you will find the same kind of thing. You will find the same kind of an approach, that those writers of the neoclassical period, they had a very strong dislike against the age in which they were living in. And they exposed the shams and snobberies of their age. They exposed the follies of their age. And for exposing this, the medium they used was comedy. The medium they used was humor and satire. Right? So I was saying that in the comedies of Ben Jonson, you will find a very strong distaste against the world in which he was living, the typical Elizabethan English society. And he delights, I mean, listen to me once again very carefully. He delights in exposing the follies and vices of that society. अब देखिए, फॉलीज और वाइसेस को एक बयान ये करने का मतलब उसको एक्सपोज करने का कई तरीका हो सकता है. आप बहुत ट्रैजिक वे में, डायरेक्ट वे में सीधा उसको कंडेम करें, क्रिटिसाइज करें, लेकिन आप उसका मजाक उड़ाएं, और ये सबसे मुश्किल काम है, याद रखिएगा. शैम्स एंड स्नॉबरीज, फॉलीज एंड मिस्टेक्स एंड ऑल दोज काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स है ना, उनको एक्सपोज करने में ये सबसे मुश्किल काम है कि laughter and fun and humor has been used in order to satirize those shams and snobberies and follies and mistakes and weaknesses of the society or the individual. Right? तो कभी कभी आपने सुना होगा कि अपनी गलतियों पे हंसना, अपने आप पे हंसना, ये सब आदमी नहीं कर पाते, सब लोग नहीं कर पाते. जो समाज अपने आप पे हंसना जानता है, जो समाज अपना मजाक उड़ाना जानता है, the society that can laugh at its shams and snobberies and follies, the community, मैं समाज और कम्युनिटी सब कह रहा हूं, जो कम्युनिटी अपने आप पे हंसना जानती है, अपनी खामियों और कमजोरियों को उछाल देना चाहती है हंसी ठट्ठा एंड लाफ्टर में, that society is a very brave society. In fact, that individual is a very brave individual, in fact, and that community is a very brave community, in fact. Coming back to Ben Jonson, he delights in exposing the shams and snobberies of his times. He delights in exposing the follies and vices and weaknesses of his times. And this he does with humor. This he does with satire. This he does with fun, laughter, and frolics. The same kind of situation you will find in the Restoration Comedy. When I was introducing the first class, when I was introducing drama in my first class, I told you about this terminology: Restoration Comedy, 18th century comedy, anti-sentimental comedy, sentimental comedy, right? These are the things you should look at, you should work upon if you're really interested in comedy. Look here. Comedy is more a difficult area than tragedy. ठीक है, ट्रेजेडी का अपील बहुत स्ट्रांग सा होता है, बहुत जल्दी होता है. कॉमेडी मुश्किल काम है, मैं आपसे अर्ज करूं. हाँ, yes, certainly I'm not referring to cheapness in comedies. I don't want to name that who are the comedians who have made comedy cheap in India. I don't want to name, आप नाराज हो जाएंगे, but I'm not referring to cheapness in comedies, right? Another thing that I would like to put in front of you is that you should also look at Ben Jonson, and you should also look at this play, that is The Alchemist, with this angle, and that is classical elements in Ben Jonson, classical elements in The Alchemist. So how he put the classical theory into practice, this is very important. How he put the classical theory into practice. I am telling you time and again that he was a very learned, a very educated man, coming from his universities, coming from his university education, basically, not universities. So certainly uski jo puri training hui hai, he has been tuned and trained in the workshop of literature, in the classroom of literature. So ultimately, it is a very big question that how he put classicism and how he put the classical theories into practice in his play. in his plays, है ना. And yes, of course, आपको जो बात करनी होगी वो ज्यादातर with reference to the Alchemist करनी होगी. जैसे ये कि dialogue, जैसे ये कि wit, WIT, it's a very important aspect of comedy and is also a very important aspect of classes. So wit, जैसे characterization, जैसे intricate plot, right? So look at these aspects: dialogue, wit, characterization, robust characterization, and very intricate plot. So these are a few aspects only that I am highlighting in front of you. कि आपको कम से कम इतना तो जरूर देखने की कोशिश करना चाहिए कि किस तरीके से हाउ बेन जॉनसन फॉलोज एंड हाउ बेन जॉनसन adheres to the classical elements in his comedies, especially The Alchemist. His comedies, comedy in Ben Jonson comes from dialogues. गजब का wit, गजब की irony, गजब का humor, है ना. Of course, there are situational comedy also. Comedy comes from situation, is called as situational comedy, right? So there are situational comedies also. Comedies, the comic comes from the situation also. Sometimes the situation turns so comic, right? But ये बहुत कम होता है बेन जॉनसन के यहाँ. होता है but it happens less. बेन जॉनसन के यहाँ comedy is created with the help of the dialogue. If you refer to the Restoration comedy writers, and if you refer to the 18th century comedy writers like Sheridan, Restoration comedy writer like Congreve, Farquhar, and Sheridan in the 18th century, Goldsmith, Oliver Goldsmith in the 18th century, और 19वीं शताब्दी का एक बहुत बड़ा विक्टोरियन एज का एक बहुत बड़ा राइटर है जिसने वापस एक तरह से कहिए कि उसने दोबारा रिस्टोर कर किया था कॉमेडी को उसी लेवल पे ले जाकर के, and that was Oscar Wilde. The Importance of Being Earnest is one very unique play. If you any time in your life, if you get some time at least, it is a one-day reading only. So you try to read, and if you're really good in English, आपको बहुत मजा आएगा. But anyways, so and even you can refer to these kind of comedies with reference to when you are working on Ben Jonson as a dramatist, or even when you are working on any kind of questions related to Restoration comedy or even the 18th century comedy. So dear friends, अब अगर मैं एक और बात आगे आपको बढ़ाऊं कि Alchemist, with regard to Alchemist, Coleridge, the very famous romantic philosopher, historian, critic, writer, all in one. So with all due respect to this man, Coleridge said कि English literature में नहीं, if you find perfection in plot anywhere, you will find it in Ben Jonson and you will find it in Alchemist. And look here, Ben Jonson has been regarded as a perfectionist in literature. Ben Jonson has been regarded as a perfectionist in comedy. I repeat once again that Coleridge says that if you are looking for three most important perfect plots in European drama, if you are looking for three most perfect plots in European drama, the plot of Alchemist is one among them. Another important aspect which I would just like to suggest in front of you without saying anything more is the Renaissance aspect in the play. Right? The play, my dear friends, is also a rebellion against religious practices of 16th century. है ना, वो जो तावीज गंडे तलिस्मान्स बेचे जाते थे हैं, ठीक है, इन क्रिश्चियनिटी कन्फेशन बॉक्स के सामने खड़े हो जाओ तो तुम्हारे सारे पाप धुल जाएंगे काइंड ऑफ थिंग, and all those concept of relics and all, please do not mind. I'm just telling this. I have no individual vendetta and individual agenda against all these things, but I'm saying this just for the sake of doing some justice to the kind of approach which Ben Jonson has undertaken in this particular play. I repeat, a rebellion against false religious practices. The next thing is the representation of London in this play. This is again a very important aspect. It's a very contemporary play in the sense that it depicts the 17th century London. So if somebody wants to know the picture of London in the 17th century, this play can help in understanding the situation. This play can help understanding the atmosphere. This play can understand everything that was associated with the 17th century London. And the next thing that I would like you to take notice is, मैं already इशारा कर चुका हूं, you should look at the names of the characters, typical names, and they are symbolic of something. So the time he uses names like subtle, face, doll common, dapper, drugger, love wit, epicure, mammon. Mammon worship is worshipping of the wealth, you know. Surly, tribulations, wholesome, pliant, Pliant. तो अगर आपकी अंग्रेजी थोड़ी सी अच्छी है, आई मीन लैंग्वेज, तो आप बहुत अच्छे से अंदाजा लगा सकते हैं कि ये सारे नाम दरअसल उन कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स के दो तक हैं, उन कैरेक्टर्स दे रिप्रेजेंट, दे सिंबलाइज दोस कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स which these characters had in the play. The next thing that I would like to say is with regard to the themes of the play, and I would like to raise three themes or three issues of the play in front of you, just giving you the name only. One is deception, and associated to deception is the concept of self-deception in the play. Duping, D-U-P-I-N-G. This is one theme. Another is foolishness and arrogance. Look here. Foolishness and arrogance. और ये बड़ा मजेदार है, ये पूरा वर्ड अगर आप इस बाइनरी को देखिए, those who are able to understand the term called binary, right? So if you look at this binary, right? Foolishness and arrogance. और पता नहीं आपको हो सकता है बुरा लगे, लेकिन ये एक बहुत बड़ा सच है कि एरोगेंट लोग बेसिकली बेवकूफी ज्यादा होते हैं बनिस्बत इसके कि वो अक्लमंद ज्यादा हों इन कंपैरिजन टू दैट. एनीवेज, I don't want to go into the details of these things. So foolishness and arrogance, one, deception, and accompanied with deception was self-deception and duping, right? And the last is reality versus desire. Look here. Reality versus desire. Apart from this, of course, you will be working on all these things. You should be working on all these issues. I repeat, reality versus desire, deception and self-deception and duping, foolishness and arrogance, etc. But let me raise one very important and one very pertinent context of the play, one very important issue of the play that जिसको बेन जॉनसन ने इस पर्टिकुलर प्ले में उठाया है. मैं इशारे में आगे भी पीछे भी बात कर चुका हूं, but I'm just saying it in another way. He is ridiculing, and he is very blatantly ridiculing the vices, the vanities, and the follies of man. Look here. He is very blatantly ridiculing the vices, the vanities, and the follies of mankind. Together with all those themes that we have raised so far, let me introduce one or two more important keywords that can also be seen as important themes. At least they can be seen as the issues that have been raised in the play. Gullibility, G-U-L-L, that is double L, I-B-I-L-I-T-Y, gullibility. And one more is greed. One more is greed. So, dear friends, let us now round off our discussion of this particular play. Alchemist is a satire, लेकिन it's not a normal satire. It is a very pitiless satire. It is a very scathing satire, SCATHING. So it's a very pitiless, it's a very scathing kind of a satire. What it satirizes? It satirizes the individual weaknesses and follies and vanities of man, but it also satirizes the follies, vices, and vanities of the social class of London, the social classes of England. है ना? So it's a very poisonous, it's a very venomous satire against the society, the English society of 17th century. It criticizes very vehemently the English society of the 17th century. To put it another way, you can also say that, sir, it is a very ruthless satire. Yes, you are right. It is a very ruthless satire against the Puritan approach towards religion. Look here. मैं बहुत ज्यादा डिटेल में नहीं जाऊंगा, जो लोग समझते हैं प्यूरिटनिज्म को वो समझ जाएंगे मेरी बात को. दुनिया के हर धर्मों में अक्रॉस रिलीजन्स ये वाला अप्रोच होता है, प्यूरिटन अप्रोच होता है रिलीजन्स का. So I don't want to go into the details, and those who are studying history of English literature, they know Puritanism very well. So it is also a satire, it is also a critique, CRITIQUE. It's also a very important critique against Puritanism. And as I said earlier, I'm repeating it, that it is a satire against religion also. Religious men are being criticized here. Those at least who practice religion in a false way, right? Those who basically try to sell religion, right? The greed for money and selling religion. Look here. Selling religion for the greed of money. मुझे माफ कीजिएगा, मैं बहुत खुल के नहीं बोल पाऊंगा, but I hope you are adult enough and mature enough to understand, even in the Indian scenario and in the scenario of the world also, that how religion is being sold across the globe, across religions, religion A, B, C, D, C, कोई भी. Of course, it is not the fault of religion. I'm not saying that. But unfortunately, बदनामी तो रिलीजन की ही होती है, गिल्टी तो रिलीजन ही माना जाएगा ना. So across the globe, the way religion is being sold for all those vices, shams, snobberies, vanities, etc., deceptions, etc. Right? And of course, to end my discussion, मैं वो वाला भी ऐड कर देता हूं. इस प्ले का जो नाम है ना, द ग्रीड फॉर गोल्ड. लेबोरेटरी में, केमिस्ट्री के लेबोरेटरी में सोना बनाने का लालच, यू नो दैट, राइट? सो द ग्रीड फॉर गोल्ड is also a reason behind the title of this play, The Alchemist, you know. So to sum up, I am suggesting 5 things for you to work upon. One is themes. मैंने कुछ थीमें बताई हैं आपको, right? The other is satire. मैंने काफी बात की है इस पे. The other is dialogue. I refer to this also. The other is characterization. I refer to this also. And the other is a style, diction. The diction, the style, the craft of Ben Jonson as a dramatist, as shown or as used here in this particular play. So with this, we stop our discussion on The Alchemist. Keep your questions with you. You can write it down if you have any piece of paper. We will take up the questions towards the end of our session, right? Let us now begin another play. But before that, let me check time. Yeah, 8 बजे हैं और हमारे पास समय है थोड़ा सा, so we should begin the next text. I repeat that if you have any kind of doubt or query or question, keep it for you. Towards the end of the session, we will take up. अगर आपको डर है कि आप भूल जाएंगे तो आप कहीं पे लिख करके रख लें रिलेटेड टू दिस अल्केमिस्ट इफ यू हैव एनी काइंड ऑफ क्वेरी. Let us now refer to, my dear friends, another play that is a part of your text, that is a part of your curriculum, and that is Bernard Shaw. Bernard Shaw, Pygmalion. Those who have the study material, those who are continuously working, they know it very well that Pygmalion is there in their study material, in their curriculum, right? So let us talk something about Pygmalion. Before that, let me make an announcement. Listen to me carefully. It's a very important announcement. I have requested Alka to give me the assignment questions. She has sent those assignment questions, which perhaps you are supposed to write maybe. We will be talking about those assignment questions in our last class. Of course, I said, and I repeat it once again, that I will not give you the answers. I will just give you a way out. A few suggestions here and a few suggestions there. So we'll be talking about that in our last class. But आपके इग्नू के official DOM से I have taken the permission that though I was given 6 classes and as per the counting, the 6th class will end tomorrow. The 6th class will end tomorrow. But from the official DOM of IGNOU, I have taken the permission that we will continue for one more class, and that will be till Saturday. We will be using the same link. I'll edit the link tomorrow, so you'll not have any kind of problem in joining through that link on Saturday also. So it's an announcement. So we will take up the assignment questions के बारे में थोड़ी बहुत बातें. मैं फिर कह रहा हूँ, आप मुझसे ये expect मत कीजिएगा, please, for God's sake. Do not expect that I am going to give you the answers or tell you the answers of the questions. Not at all. I will just give you a few things. ठीक है? तो मैं अब आऊं जरा सा पिग्मेलियन पे. एंड अगेन मैंने ये इतना बड़ा अनाउंसमेंट क्यों किया, क्यों, इसलिए कि मेरा भी स्वार्थ था थोड़ा सा. ऑफ कोर्स द स्वार्थ इज नॉट मनी, रिमेंबर, इट्स नॉट मनी एट ऑल. द स्वार्थ इज कि when it comes to Bernard Shaw, the whole of the year and a continuous talking whole of the year is minimum. So, but anyway, I will try to limit myself to 8 pages that I have noted down for you with regard to Pygmalion. Just to saving my time, कि मैं ज्यादा बहकू नहीं, मेरी आदत है, आपको लगा होगा 2-3 दिन से आप लोग मेरे साथ हैं, तो you should have guessed and you should have assumed, बल्कि और and very correctly you should have assumed कि ये थोड़ा बहकते बहुत ज्यादा हैं. This is what I do basically. लेकिन अपने आप को स्पेसिफिक रखने के लिए बर्नार्ड शॉ में ताकि समय पे खत्म कर पाऊं, I'll be talking more on the sheets. दोस्त, मैं ये अर्ज करना चाहता हूं, बल्कि I would like to start from this. मतलब डाटा पार्ट के मैं आपसे ये कहूं कि मुझे शेक्सपियर पसंद नहीं है, बर्नार्ड शॉ ज्यादा पसंद है, और आप मुझसे सवाल करें क्यों सर ऐसा क्यों कह रहे हैं. इट्स अ वेरी पर्सनल थिंग. सो ये सब मैं बातें नहीं करूंगा. मैं सिर्फ बर्नार्ड शॉ के बारे में और आपके ड्रामे के बारे में, लेट अस टॉक समथिंग प्रिसाइजली. फ्रेंड्स, आई टोल्ड यू इन सम ऑफ माई क्लास सम डे अर्लियर, मतलब 2 ही 3 दिन तो आपसे मुलाकात हुई, ज्यादा तो हुई नहीं है, तो बेटा ऐसा करो, 1 गिलास पानी दे दो हमको और ये ले जाओ, ये ठंडी हो गई चाय. हाँ, तो हम कह रहे थे कि आई हैव टोल्ड यू दैट के when you are preparing any text, any literary text, you should surely look at the author, and but only those things and only in that way through which that can help you understand the author and understand his text. मैं अपने स्टूडेंट्स को बहुत ठेठ सा एक एग्जांपल देता हूं कि सपोज करो कि शेक्सपियर married with a woman in his hometown or in his native place, Stratford upon Avon, है ना? Before coming to London and before becoming a writer and a dramatist, etc., he married a woman who was older than him. He had a very horrible married life, perhaps, as it is symbolically referred. He came to London, he became a very huge dramatist. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not, I'm just giving an example. आप ये मत समझिएगा कि सर सच बोल रहे थे. Maybe that he was indulged in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 relationships in London. But all these things, whether the failed marriage or his relationships, जिसके लिए उसने डार्क लेडी का कैरेक्टर बनाया और सॉनेट्स लिख दी, तो if all these things have nothing to do with understanding Shakespeare, the author, there is no need to refer to these things. There is no need to take care of these things. But I said it in my Shuruati class, I'm repeating it. But if one small little relationship, affair of John Keats with a lady called Fanny Brown resulted in the tragic approach of John Keats in his poetry and had contributed that experience, that relationship with that woman and her faithlessness that she betrayed and left, है ना? So horrible. This is really horrible. I mean, I don't know that whether you are really students of post graduation that you are requesting somebody to add in the WhatsApp group. Oof. So I was saying, okay, if Keats's relationship with Fanny Brown, her faithlessness, that the way she duped Keats when she came to know that Keats has no future and he will die very soon because he is suffering from tuberculosis, and the whole of the family has the history of dying by tuberculosis. So she left. If this particular relationship is important in understanding the love poems of John Keats, for example, poems like Bright Star, poems like Lamia, right? So if this relationship is important to understand Keats the poet, तो ठीक है, हमें पढ़ना चाहिए उसके बारे में. बिल्कुल वैसे ही मैं बर्नार्ड शॉ के हवाले से भी मैं आपसे अर्ज करूं कि it is very important for all of us to read the life of Bernard Shaw very minutely. And that can give you amazing details. But anyways, I'll not go into all those details because we do not have that much time. मैं आपसे सिर्फ 3 बातें बर्नार्ड शॉ के बारे में at the very outset. Let me take 3 keywords. One is that he was Irish, not an Englishman. Look here, this is very important. He was Irish, not a British. 2, yes, he was a dramatist, but apart from a dramatist, he was a prose writer also. He was an art critic also, you know. जब आप बर्नार्ड शॉ की लाइफ पढ़ेंगे, you will find this out. He was an art critic also, and he was the next keyword, the third keyword that I would like to take for understanding Bernard Shaw is socialist. So these 3 important keywords are very important to understand Bernard Shaw. One is his citizenship, his nativity. The other is his writing, that he was a dramatist as well as an art critic and a prose writer. And the third is his political agenda, his political approach, socialism, socialist, right? He was very close to some such writers, some such personas, very sorry, like A.O. Hume and Annie Besant. I hope you know these names if you have read the history of Indian इंडिपेंडेंस स्ट्रगल, यू नो दीज नेम्स, बट एनीवेज छोड़े उसको. When we look at Shaw as a dramatist, which is certainly our concern, friends, the kind of plays he had written can be divided into two broad categories. Listen to me, this is very important. मैं ये नहीं बताने जा रहा हूं कि इन दोनों कैटेगरीज में से पिग्मैलियन बिलोंग्स टू विच कैटेगरी. ये मैं आपके लिए ट्रबल क्रिएट कर रहा हूं, आपको डिसाइड करना होगा या मालूम करना होगा नेट से ही सही कि टू विच कैटेगरी पिग्मैलियन बिलोंग्स. But I'm giving you the two categories to which all his plays, a number of plays, and he had written very hugely. He was a very prolific writer. बहुत लिखा है इसने. And he had a very long life, you know. He had a very long life. And he had a very long creative period, professional career. And he was very healthy, even towards the end part of his life. He had one very unique figure, very towering, taller man kind of thing. But anyways, so his plays are divided into two categories. One is called plays pleasant and the other is called plays unpleasant. Look here. Bernard Shaw never calls his plays tragedies. Bernard Shaw never calls his plays comedies. Yes, हम लोग उसको कैटेगराइज करते हैं, हम लोग उसको कैटेगराइज करते हैं कि ये ड्रामे बर्नार्ड शॉ के जो हैं ये कॉमेडीज हैं. ठीक है, जैसे मान लिया आपने पढ़ा होगा, यू मस्ट हैव रेड इन योर high school days, if not high school days, in your intermediate days, if not in intermediate days, preferably in your graduation days, if you are having a literature background, that very famous play by Bernard Shaw called Arms and the Man, which has been famous as anti-romantic comedy. लेकिन this particular terminology called anti-romantic comedy, ये हम लोग कहते हैं इन ड्रामों को बर्नार्ड शॉ के. बर्नार्ड शॉ used to call his plays as two, I repeat, plays pleasant and plays unpleasant. Right? I am leaving you with the task to search that Pygmalion belongs to which category. The next thing that I would like to give you an information is that he had a very wide knowledge of music, art, and literature. He basically started as a music critic, then he started writing art criticism, then he switched on to writing novels, and when he found that he is not successful in writing novels, he switched over to drama. So this was the journey. Bernard Shaw had a very troublesome childhood. I don't want to go into the details, but he had a very troublesome childhood. His mother was a singer. And since his mother was a singer, that is why he started his professional career. I mean, आवाज जा रही है?
Yes, sir.
Right. So he started his professional career as a music critic first. And then he switched on to writing art criticism, I mean fine art. That he had very good ears, of course, because from his early childhood he was able to listen to his mother singing. So he had very good ears, very musical ears, you can say. I don't know, हम लोग के घरों में इस तरह के टर्म, उसके कान बड़े म्यूजिकल हैं. गला म्यूजिकल होना तो सुना है, कान बड़े म्यूजिकल हैं. Yes, it can be possible, है ना? So he had those kind of an ears. और ये मैं इसलिए कह रहा हूं बिकॉज इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट दिस पर्टिकुलर एलिमेंट, this particular characteristic of Bernard Shaw, I mean his musicality, that comes as a very important aspect in his writings. I mean, the kind of Angrezi he writes, the kind of flow he achieves, the kind of movement and motion he achieves in his writing, in his dialogues, and in his writings. Anyway, I move on to some another very important aspect. Chandan, ये वाला aspect तुम्हें बड़ा मजेदार लगेगा. अभी तुम तारीफ कर रहे थे. Listen, he was a vegetarian. He was a socialist. अब ये वेजिटेरियन से मुझे याद आया, मैं एक बात अपने तमाम स्टूडेंट्स को सुनाता हूं, और मुझे मैं ये अपना आपको अटपटा लगेगा कि ये क्या बक रहे हैं, बट मैं ये अपना बर्नार्ड शॉ इज अ रिलीजन फॉर मी. तो मैं अपना ये धार्मिक फर्ज समझता हूं कि मैं अपने स्टूडेंट्स को बताऊं कि बर्नार्ड शॉ कैसा बदमाश आदमी था. मतलब व्हाट काइंड ऑफ आउटराइट, मतलब ब्लंट जिसको आप कहिए. तो मैं 2-3 इंसिडेंट्स अपने सारे स्टूडेंट्स को सुनाता हूं, चाहे वो डायरेक्ट वाले स्टूडेंट्स हो इनसाइड द क्लासरूम, और चाहे आप हो इनडायरेक्ट वाले स्टूडेंट्स. कि उसके बारे में बहुत मशहूर है कि ब्रिटिश सिनेमा स्क्रीन, अच्छा लिसन, ये याद आ गया, ही वॉज अ वेरी गुड स्क्रीन राइटर, अ वेरी सक्सेसफुल सिनेमा राइटर इन हिज डेज. देखिएगा, इसको पढ़ लीजिएगा, ये भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट है. And he himself turned most of his dramas into screenplays. A very successful, मतलब इतना कि he got Academy Award for writing a screenplay. You know, I hope you know Academy Awards, right? So he got Academy Awards for writing a screenplay. So एक गजब का स्क्रीन प्ले राइटर जिसने अपने ड्रामों को ही, ज्यादातर अपने ड्रामों को ही कन्वर्ट किया स्क्रीन्स में, आई मीन स्क्रीन प्लेज में. तो ब्रिटिश सिनेमा स्क्रीन की एक बहुत मशहूर हीरोइन थी, एंड शी वाज मैड अबाउट बर्नार्ड शॉ. और बर्नार्ड शॉ कैसा है? बहुत लंबा, अजीब सा लंबा, अमिताभ बच्चन से भी ज्यादा बेडोल टाइप का आदमी. प्लीज बियर विथ मी, आई मे टेक सम 15-20 मिनट्स मोर बिकॉज इट इज बर्नार्ड शॉ. तो और अजीब सा हेल्थ, अजीब सी हड्डियां, अजीब से पंजे, अजीब से हाथ, अजीब सा चेहरा, उसमें बहुत सारे स्पॉट्स मुंह पे उसके, बिकॉज बचपन में उसको वो क्या बोलते हैं उसको, स्मॉल पॉक्स, चिकन पॉक्स क्या होती है, राइट. एनीवेज, तो दैट वेरी फेमस हीरोइन ऑफ इंग्लिश स्क्रीन वाज मैड अबाउट हिम. And she was not leaving any opportunity to express her desire, to express her love, to express her proposal to Bernard Shaw. तो ऐसे ही मैं जो बताना चाह रहा था वो सुनिए. ऐसे ही किसी एक मीटिंग में वो टकरा गई बर्नार्ड शॉ से, और बर्नार्ड शॉ हमेशा उनको, he was a very अकड़ू काइंड ऑफ अ फेलो. तो टकरा गई, फिर घेर लिया उन्होंने बर्नार्ड शॉ को, और फिर कहा, लगी कन्विंस करने, और कहा, सुनिए, कहा कि मिस्टर शॉ, जस्ट थिंक, इफ वी स्टार्ट अवर रिलेशनशिप, इफ वी मैरी, गिव मी जस्ट 1 minute, आई हैव टू स्विच ऑन द चार्जिंग ऑफ माई बैटरी, प्लीज जस्ट 1 minute ओनली. All right, so hopefully I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sir,
So she said, Mr. Shaw, just think that my beauty, I mean the heroine's beauty, and your intelligence, your intellect, if these two meet, think, Mr. Shah, what kind of children we will have. My beauty and your intelligence, think, Mr. Shah, what kind of children we will have. अब उसने जवाब क्या दिया पता है? Well, madam, what will happen if it is done the otherwise? अगर उल्टा हो गया तब क्या होगा? मेरी ब्यूटी और आपका इंटेलिजेंस. So that kind of a fellow he was. Vegetarianism, Chandan, तुम्हें अच्छा लगेगा सुन करके. Regarding vegetarianism, he had that. This is a very biased statement. You can say it is again a gender biased statement also. So Bernard Shaw can be charged of that also even after his death. So a vegetarian, a socialist, और वो वेजिटेरियनिज्म के बारे में ही उसने कहा था कि माई स्टोमक इज नॉट द ग्रेवयार्ड ऑफ डेड एनिमल्स. सुना ही आपने. तो एनीवेज, let us move on quickly to another thing. He was associated with an Irish society with which A.O. Hume and Annie Besant were also associated. I hope you know that Annie Besant and A.O. Hume, both of them were Irish. So he was associated with the same Irish society. I don't know whether you have heard the name, the Fabian Society. Work upon this. He was writing and even editing for socialist magazines. He was writing continuously for the Socialist Party of England in the newspapers. And listen to me, I'm adding one more thing. He was a drama critic also, theater critic. But apart from being a dramatist, he was a theater critic also. Let me move on quickly to one very important aspect. At that time when Shaw was attempting criticism, I mean, he was writing music criticism, art criticism, and theater criticism, continuously writing in magazines and newspapers, writing reviews of the theater or art galleries or art exhibitions, and writing reviews of the music. And yes, of course, he was continuously writing for socialism also, editing those socialist magazines, etc. also. When he was involved in all these things, at the same time, two dramatists of the late Victorian era, I have already given you the name, A.W. Pinero, A.W. Pinero, Pinero, and H.A. Jones. These two dramatists were trying hard to establish modern drama. They were trying very hard to establish realism in English theatre. Because English theatre was so much endowed with and it was so much involved with romanticism and the romantic approach, that these two dramatists, A.W. Pinero and H.A. Jones, were completely, totally, 100% unsuccessful in their very important desire to start realistic drama in England, to establish realistic drama in England, to write something जो कि real romanticism से हट करके हो. But English drama was so much involved in all those kind of artificial plots, conventional characters, romance and romanticism, etc., that Pinero and Jones were not so successful. This job was done by Bernard Shaw later on. Kaise? He came across two plays by the great Norwegian dramatist Henrik Ibsen. First, he saw the show of A Doll's House, which is a play by Ibsen, and you know it's a very famous feminist play. वो तो मैंने बहुत जानबूझ करके वो वाला मुद्दा उठाया और उसमें मैंने फेमिनिज्म और जेंडर बायसनेस का स्कोप छोड़ा है, बिकॉज अब जब आप आगे बढ़िएगा तो आप यू विल फाइंड शो इन अ वेरी डिफरेंट वे. सो दैट नॉर्वेगियन ड्रामेटिस्ट हेनरिक इब्सन was hitting the scene or the scenario of European theatre and drama with his female centric plays like A Doll's House. There were other plays also, लेकिन डॉल्स हाउस की जो कैरेक्टर उसने क्रिएट किया था नोरा, यू नो. एनीवेज, सो शॉ saw that play, the show of that play in the theater, and then he immediately got attracted to Henrik Ibsen. He immediately got attracted to Henrik Ibsen, and he became mad about Henrik Ibsen. He started collecting information about Ibsen. He started collecting his plays that he had written. So he started reading those plays by Henrik Ibsen, and soon, you know, जो पहली किताब उसकी ड्रामे पे आ रही है, that was not a drama basically. It was a book on Henrik Ibsen. The book was titled as The Quintessence of Ibsenism. The Quintessence of Ibsenism. That turned Mr. Bernard Shaw from art criticism, theater criticism, and what you can say, music criticism, and take him to join the professional English theater. And here comes a dramatist who was vehemently opposing and became successful in that vehement opposition of romanticism in English theater, in English drama. I mean, if you refer to his play, The Widower's House, yeah, A Widower's House, I'm forgetting the title, but it is Widower's House, right? It's, आप नाम देखिए इसका, Widower's House. But basically, it is a play about slum landlordism in London. It is about slum landlordism in London. And he hits upon the scandal of slum landlordism and the way the slum owners treat the slum dwellers. The slum owners treat the slum dwellers. So he attacked, by this play, A Widower's House, he attacked the romantic conventions of British theatre. और एक बार ये लेबल जो लगा बर्नार्ड शॉ पे रोमांटिसिज्म का विरोधी होने का, that continued. He came up with one more play. Let us move quickly. Mrs. Warren's Profession. And that he wrote in 1893. Mrs. Warren's Profession, he wrote in 1893. But it was such a controversial play कि जिसके पास भी स्क्रिप्ट लेकर के जाता था वो डायरेक्टर और वो थिएटर मालिक जो है वो रिफ्यूज कर देता था, not to stage that play, not to produce that play. And he kept that script for 9 years waiting to be staged, waiting to be played. The play was staged only in 1902, although it was written in 1893. आप कहेंगे क्यों? Because of that ये अंग्रेजी इंग्लिश ड्रामे के हिस्ट्री में it was one very bold play about prostitution. है ना? And that subject, एक तो itself is very controversial, and on the other hand, Mr. Bernard Shaw is dealing that text, that play. So, मतलब he, जिसको आप कहते हैं ना organized prostitution, so that उसकी धज्जियां उड़ा दी, जिसको आप अंग्रेजी में कहें अगर आप उसको, है ना, मतलब he turned this organized prostitution this way or that way. And to your surprise, this particular play, Mrs. Warren's Profession, was not simply about prostitution. This was a huge play on economics. दिस वॉज अ ह्यूज प्ले ऑन इकोनॉमिक्स. तो उसके जो इकोनॉमिक डिटर्मिनेंट्स दैट वेर यूज्ड बाय बर्नार्ड शॉ इन दिस प्ले, दैट वेर यूनिकली, मतलब यूनिकली पोर्ट्रेड, यूनिकली कैप्चर्ड. Now, at this juncture, I would like to introduce one very important term, which is very important. You should make a note of it, you should make a point of it, and you should work upon this. A concept that is associated with Bernard Shaw and his drama is the drama of ideas. It has been said time and again that Bernard Shaw के जो ड्रामे हैं, they are termed as drama of ideas. And to what extent? To what extent? I mean, let me check time. Just give me 2-3 minutes only. I'll finish. मैं ज्यादा समय नहीं लूंगा आपका. हालांकि मैंने आपसे कहा है कि मैं कुछ समय आपका लूंगा, एक्सपेक्ट करता हूँ, बट लेट मी राउंड इट ऑफ टुडे, फॉर टुडे. मैं ये कह रहा था कि ड्रामा ऑफ आइडियाज इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कॉन्सेप्ट इन द स्टडी ऑफ बर्नार्ड शॉ. एंड चाहे उसके प्लेज प्लीजेंट हों or whether plays unpleasant, Bernard Shaw was basically trying to drive the nation. Bernard Shaw was basically trying to drive England home to his ideas. उसके बारे में ये इल्जाम लगता है that he was basically not a dramatist, he was not writing drama, he was a propagandist, he was propagating his ideology through drama. और जब उससे पूछा गया कि ये इल्जाम है मिस्टर शाह, बिकॉज ही गॉट नोबेल प्राइज ऑल्सो, ऑल्दो ही रिफ्यूज टू टेक एक्सेप्ट नोबेल प्राइज, ये भी बताएं आपको. सो ही वाज आस्क्ड कि मिस्टर शाह, इट हैज बीन एलिज्ड दैट यू आर अ प्रोपेगेंडिस्ट, यू राइट ड्रामा टू प्रोपेगेट योर विचारधारा. He said, well, if rejecting a theory, if rejecting a belief, if rejecting a wrong practice and trying to turn the nation to my ideas is propaganda, then yes, I am a propagandist. He never denied. He said, yes, if rejecting a false practice, if vehemently criticizing that false notion of the society, right, and turning the nation to my idea, selling my idea to the nation is called propaganda, then I am a propagandist, yes. So he basically, my dear friends, he basically used the stage to empower the audience. अच्छा, मैं इस सिलसिले में एक छोटी सी बात और I would like to put in front of you is that Shakespeare wrote dramas not to become popular in literature and to become immortal in literature. Shakespeare was writing drama professionally and selling his script to the theater. है ना? He is selling the script to the theater directors and producers of the Elizabethan stage. And once the script is sold, say for example, a particular script is sold in £600 by Shakespeare, the script of Merchant of Venice is no more Shakespeare's script. It is the property of that theater house, that Globe Theatre, for example, who has purchased that script. It is same like the case कि जैसे सलीम जावेद ने अपनी कहानी लिख करके रमेश सिप्पी को दे दी, प्रोडक्शन हाउस को दे दी, and script of Sholay is now the property of the Sippy Productions. The same is the case with Shakespeare. So he was not writing his plays to make himself immortal and popular in literature. But Shaw had a very different case. Shaw had a very different case. So when Shaw was writing his plays, उसको ऐसा लगता था, this is very interesting to know, he used to believe that the kind of things he is talking in his plays, the audience will not be able to understand. जो बातें मैं अपने ड्रामे में, the things I am talking in my plays, the audience will not be able to understand. तो वो हर ड्रामे का प्रीफेस लिखता था. He used to write prefaces. और वो प्रीफेस के साथ देता था डायरेक्शन हाउस को। मजेदार बात बताने वाला हूं, सुनिए। So when you will purchase a text of Pygmalion, it will contain a preface. When you will purchase a text of, say for example, Arms and the Man, तो उसमें वो पहले लिखा रहेगा preface to plays pleasant, because Arms and the Man belongs to that category. तो उसमें ऊपर लिखा रहेगा preface to plays pleasant. So he used to write one very lengthy preface, and in that particular play preface, he used to explain everything for his audience. जब थिएटर में when his play used to be produced and when his plays used to staged, तो पर्दा उठने से पहले before the curtain rises, he used to appear in front of the audience in the theater, and he used to explain the whole preface to the audience. He used to explain the whole ideas through the form of that preface to the audience, and then he left the stage, and then the curtain rises and the play begins. Why I am telling you this? Because to make you understand that, okay, in order to understand a Bernard Shaw play, it is important to read the prefaces also. You cannot make justice to Pygmalion even if you read the whole text originally, which the IGNOU students do not do. मैं ये कह रहा हूं कि टेक्स्ट छोड़िए, it is very important to read those prefaces to understand a Bernard Shaw play. I would like to conclude today's discussion with a few more quick informations to you. For example, Arms and the Man is regarded as a play of ideas, a drama of ideas. Arms and the Man, if you have read that, you know, has been regarded as an anti-romantic play. For example, Candida, that very famous play which we have here in our Kolhan University syllabus, right? So, for example, this very Candida is very famous for its feminism. देखिए मैं कहाँ लेके आया, मैंने वो स्टेटमेंट आपको सुनाया था जिसके बारे में मैंने खुद कहा कि आप कह सकते हैं कि ये जेंडर बायस, आजकल ये चलन चला है, बेसिकली आजकल ये चलन चला है। वो एक दिन और कहा था मैंने आपसे कि 500-600 साल पुराने राइटर्स को पकड़ करके उनके ऊपर इल्जाम लगाया जाए कि उसने ऐसा क्यों लिखा है ना, he was biased against this and he must be biased against फला, etc etc. But look here, when I'm referring to his play Candida, I'm saying that he was basically hitting upon the feminist ideas. He was talking about socialism. And just to give you a food for thought tonight, because it's a very difficult philosophy which Bernard Shaw has presented in his plays, the concept of life force. It is there in Pygmalion also. It is there in Arms and the Man also. But this concept of life force is a very important part of a 4-play series that Bernard Shaw wrote, titled as Back to Methuselah series. And his masterpiece, Bernard Shaw's masterpiece is Man and Superman. So he deals with this concept of life force and creative evolution in that very famous play, Man and Superman. So I'm just giving you a food for thought for tonight. That is, you should try to understand and you should try to work upon this concept of Shaw's concept of creative evolution and life force. ये बहुत ही philosophical and it's a very difficult and it's a very lengthy idea also, so we cannot go into the details of this. We will not have that much time. So that is why I'm requesting you to work upon this, right? So let us stop our discussion here itself. Let us call it a night or a day, whatever it is. But I am here. Those who want to leave, don't want to ask anything, may leave. Those who have questions, please, I'm there in the chat box. Slowly, slowly. Chandan, please wait. how important is it to have a prior knowledge of the contemporary society to understand comedy of humor and comedy of manners? Chandan, uh, I cannot go into the details. We do not have that much time, but yes, मैं थोड़ी सी बातें जरूर करूंगा. One is कि comedy of humor is a 17th century concept, Elizabethan Jacobean concept. Comedy of manners is a concept which we find in the neoclassical times, that was post restoration, post 1660. ये ध्यान रखना होगा. Another thing is कि कॉमेडी और ह्यूमर और कॉमेडी ऑफ मैनर में बहुत फर्क है. Comedy of manners, as the name itself suggests, makes fun of the mannerisms of English society in the post 1660 and 18th century scenario. The mannerisms, the dikhawa, the artificiality in mannerisms, right? The kind of artificial behavior we do. So it has something to do with manners. Whereas comedy of humors is something that is basically related with the inner persona or the inner self of man, that to the biological aspect of man. I mean, it has something to do with, as I said, it has something to do with the humors. These two are not, Homa Nazneen, please, for God's sake. These two are not should not be taken in the same way. But yes, कॉमेडी ऑफ ह्यूमर के जरिया भी और कॉमेडी ऑफ मैनर्स के जरिया भी, the writers of both these comedies were highlighting the shams, the snobberies, the vices and the weaknesses and the artificialities of the urban London or the urban British society of their contemporary times. That was, for Ben Jonson, it was the 16th century. For the Restoration dramatists, it was the late 17th century, right? And for Ben Jonson, it was early 17th century also. And for the 18th century writers, the anti-sentimental writers, the sentimental writers, it was the 18th century English society. Another thing is related to comedy of manners, because you can study Dryden and Alexander Pope and their mock approach towards English society, which they did in their poetry. More especially those two great mock epics that they wrote. I mean, Dryden wrote Macflick, no, I hope you know, and Alexander Pope wrote that very famous Rape of Locke, right? So these are two very different things. Okay. Now let us move to another. I would like to make announcement once again that, and मुझे बहुत खराब लग रहा है कि ये एमए के लोग हैं and they are behaving in such a way. Please, for God's sake, do not become a victim of spamming. Do not become a member of any WhatsApp group. We at IGNU reject these kind of ideas. We are not responsible for all these things. तो मुझे बहुत खराब लग रहा है कि मैं मैच्योर लोगों से कैसे बात कर रहा हूं फिर इस तरीके से. Is the Puritan outlook in this book is similar to as mentioned in the Scarlet Letter? ना. बिल्कुल नहीं. Can you throw light? I do not have any light in my hand which I can throw. I can throw a stone, cannot throw light. The concept of critic and critique. No, I'm not a language teacher. Basically, this is not a language class. You can look at it in a dictionary. A critic is a person. Critique is a very different thing. Critique is the act of criticism. Okay. Anything can be asked from the last discussion or from the previous discussion. Yes, this is what I said yesterday, that T.S. Eliot had a very vehement criticism against uh, Hamlet, and he said that it was an artistic failure. This is not the time to go into the details of that. You should look at it. No, I cannot repeat. This is not. I'm not a tape recorder that I can repeat all these things. This is very bad. All right. So uh, कल एक भाई थे हमारे. He was asking about that undertones of sexual undertones in Hamlet towards his mother. वो हैं आज? I'll be talking about Pygmalion. Pygmalion is not finished, Alka. Please leave. No suitable questions are coming now. Please leave. हाँ चंदन, वो परहैप्स नहीं है, नहीं शायद वो कोई मेल थे या पता नहीं, आई डोंट नो शी थी या हे थे. लेकिन उसमें बहुत सारे अंडरटोन्स हैं. मतलब सेक्सुअल अंडरटोन्स खाली इस सेंस में नहीं है कि हैमलेट हैड अ काइंड ऑफ अ फीलिंग अगेन अबाउट हर हिज मदर. सेक्सुअल अंडरटोन्स इस सेंस में भी हैं कि आखिर क्यों मेरी माँ ने मेरे अंकल से शादी की. उसमें भी सेक्सुअल अंडरटोन्स आते हैं. एनीवेज, any more question? Yeah, there is one. This is what I have already told yesterday, that was Macbeth's tragedy. Sorry, that was Hamlet's tragedy. He delayed the action, and since he delayed the action, that is why a lot of barbadi, a lot of destruction happened, and that was basically the tragedy of Hamlet. All right, so let us leave. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Chandan, regarding the name of characters in Midsummer, मुझे वैसा कोई वो वाली बात नजर नहीं आती है, as it is there in आज कौन सा प्ले किया हम लोगों ने बात की, अल्केमिस्ट. अल्केमिस्ट में जो नाम है वो बड़े रिप्रेजेंटेटिव नाम है, बड़े ही हिंटिंग किस्म के नाम है. बट मुझे वो नाम वहां पे वैसा आज सच नजर नहीं आते. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल पक इज देयर, ओबेरोन इज देयर, राइट, टाइटेनिया इज देयर. ठीक है. फिर उसके बाद इफ यू लुक एट दोस, लाइजेंडर इज देयर, हार्मिया इज देयर, हेलेना इज देयर. दीज आर ऑल. हेलेना तो बहुत ही हिस्टोरिकल सा नाम है, बिल्कुल. ठीक है. तो आई डोंट सी एनी काइंड ऑफ symbolic or representative kind of thing in the name itself in A Midsummer Night's Dream. Thank you. Thank you so much. Good night. Thank you so much. सब लोगों को thank you. Let us now depart. Thanks a lot.